as always, shut up. Hey, welcome back. Today I wanted to do another video reviewing a series that I just recently finished. I finished this series on the 11th of this month, so about a week and a half ago, I can't remember. If you guys don't know, The Haunting of Bly Manor is the second series within the Haunting anthology series by Mike Flanagan, and it's on Netflix. A lot of the actors that were in The Haunting on Hill House are also playing characters, not the same characters, different characters obviously, in The Haunting on Bly Manor. If you guys want to give it a try, I would suggest watching The Haunting of Hill House first, so you kind of get an idea of what exactly kind of the Haunting anthology is. We're gonna get right into the good and the questionable for the series. I'm gonna give my opinions on certain things, and at the end I'm gonna give my conclusion as to what I expect for the third season, if there's even gonna be a third season, and what I'm hoping for the rest of the series. So let's start with the good. The love story, mwah, phenomenal. I love the love story between Jamie and Victoria. That's their actress name. Jamie and Danny. I love the love story between Jamie and Danny. I felt like it came out of nowhere, but it was a good out of nowhere. Like, that last episode had me bawling, and I didn't expect for this season to make me cry, because last season I did not cry at all. It was like, well, it was a horror story, so I was mostly just terrified watching last season, but this time, like, I was a mess at the end of the series. Owen needs its own show. Let me tell you something. Owen and Danny grabbed this show by its hands and just pulled the fuck out of it. I love Owen. I think he was such a cute character. I wish they did a whole spin-off on him. I love every scene where he was cooking, was just like, mwah. I loved it so much. I just wanted to see more of Owen. I just wanted to know more of Owen. And I just kind of hated how he was a secondary character, obviously, but I just wish that there was more of him, just besides, you know, his whole thing with Hannah and just his mom. I just want more of Owen. The atmosphere is very much the same as The Haunting of Hill House, but just not as scary. But one thing that I put on the questionable that I think I should have put on the good, actually, now that I'm looking at this, The Haunting of Bly Manor is more of a tragedy compared to The Haunting of Hill House. The Haunting of Hill House deals a lot with grief, and The Haunting of Bly Manor deals a lot with more like regrets and mistakes that people have made over the years and stuff like that. It deals with a lot of tragedy, and I think The Haunting of Bly Manor should be on its own category, separated for The Haunting of Hill House, because yes, there was scary stuff in The Haunting of Bly Manor, but it wasn't actually that scary, like, and not in a bad way, because honestly there were some scenes out there in The Haunting of Bly Manor that honestly, like, creeped me the heck out. That scene where Flora is playing hide and seek with Danny and her brother, and she like turns around to the ghost or whatever the fuck it was, and she's like, shh, and it stops. Ugh. It's like, so there were some good scenes in The Haunting of Bly Manor that are like scary, but God, compared to The Haunting of Hill House, is not as scary. I like the story behind every character. I think they did well when it came to developing most of the characters. I think Hannah and Owen, and maybe even Jamie, should have gotten a little bit more development than they got, because I felt like Owen and Hannah were very lacking in development, and they played such a huge part of the story. But I did really like how they developed Peter and what's her freaking Mrs. Jessel? I can't freaking remember her name. I like how they developed their story. Although Peter's developed more towards the end of the show than other characters. I felt like it was a little bit scattered, but I still really liked how they developed most of their story, especially Danny's story, although she's the main character, so she's gonna have the most developed story out of all of them all. I really, really loved Danny's story. Like, I don't know, it was just really good, and I loved how they developed it, and they did a good job. But I really wish they would have developed Jamie's a little better, since she was Danny's love like partner or whatever. Now, let's get into the questionable. The first thing I have, which is the first thing I thought about when I saw Hannah, is that I knew immediately that she was a ghost. The moment that I saw her not eating and she was like, oh no, I'm not hungry, and like her plate was completely full right after they served it, and like I think by the second time that she did that, I was like, she's definitely a ghost. You can't convince me otherwise. She's been dead the whole time. This whole thing has been going on. Like, dead. And guess what? I was right. She was deader than dead. Dead as hell. So dead. I put the way that some of the stories are presented or set up, but I think that was an incomplete thought because that just doesn't make sense when I say it out loud. I think what I was trying to write when I wrote this down was that the way that some of the stories are set up don't make much sense to me. Like, I get like the whole thing with like the haunting of Hill House, the whole like non-linear thing with the haunting of Bly Manor. I think that it was a little bit too overdone. Like, I felt like I was watching somebody like lucid dreaming or whatever, because I could not at some point keep up with what was going on, and like I just kind of had a hard time. Like, towards the end, I went back to like Wikipedia and I looked up the earlier episodes for me to try to figure out certain things, because some of them were just too like out everywhere for me to understand, and it was kind of confusing. I put the kids acting was good, but I would just wish Flora didn't say perfectly splendid all the fucking time. Hear me out. I love Flora and I love, what's his name? Miles? It's not Miles. Will? Fuck, I forgot his name. I love them. They were really great. They had great acting, I think, although Flora's character creeped me out because she barely had any emotions throughout the whole show. It was really weird. But every time she said perfectly splendid, I wanted to grab my head and like run into a wall. I hated every time she said perfectly splendid. Like, oh my, I get the joke. Like, I got the joke. It wasn't even a joke. I don't even know if it was a joke. I just hated it. It was so freaking annoying. Another thing that I was a little bit confused about was how many people exactly died on Bly Manor, and why is it only certain ghosts that appear? Now, I understand that they probably didn't have the budget to like put 10,000 ghosts in there if 10,000 people died in that manor, but I remember, if I remember correctly, Jamie said that anybody that died on Bly Manor stayed there, right? But she also said that there were many people that died besides the people and the ghosts that were shown that got stuck on Bly Manor. But we never really see them, and we never really like hear from them, or we never like hear anybody else mention them. So I'm wondering if it was truly just those people, like those ghosts that were presented in the show that died there, or maybe I misunderstood or something, because I was really confused by the end when she said that. So half of the time I forgot this show was set in the 80s. I honestly forgot that the show was set in the 80s more than half of the time, because I would be watching the show, and like I started watching the show while I was doing my math homework. Why do I feel like every time I start a new show I'm always doing my math homework? It's because I don't want to think about the math. I just want to think about something else, so I'm like aimlessly doing my math homework while looking at the TV, because it's so much easier for me to do it. Half of the time that I was watching the show and I was doing my homework, I quickly forgot that this show was set in the 80s. And I think it's because I have this idea in my head of what a show that is set in the 80s is supposed to like be like, because of, I don't know, Stranger Things. I feel like shows like Stranger Things have set up this like this plane in my head that this is what shows set in the 80s are supposed to look like. Granted, the show wasn't set in the United States, so maybe that's why, because the show was set in England in like a very old-timey house. But I don't know, like the characters didn't scream 80s. Like sometimes I remembered because of Danny's hairstyles, but other than that, half of the time I'll be thinking, why didn't they just call through their cell phone? Like, why wouldn't they just call through their phones? Like, or why wouldn't they just like do this and that? I would have to remind myself, like, oh no, wait, this is the 80s. This is not how shit works in this show. So like, I don't know, that's an aspect that I found weird that it didn't click in my head. But I think that's just a me thing. That's not a show thing. So next thing is that I feel like the season could have been longer. Now, I know the Haunting on Hill House. Of Hill House? On Hill House. I cannot remember the names at all. I know the Haunting on Hill House was 10 episodes long. But I feel like 10 episodes was good enough for the Haunting on Hill House. Now, for the Haunting of Bly Manor, I feel like there were issues and certain storylines and certain things that could have been or should have been stretched out a little better. I feel like there are certain things that were rushed. I feel like a lot of things were shortened, or like things that weren't exactly necessary were elongated, like the whole thing with Hannah. Her whole thing was just too much. That's one of the things that like weirded me out while I was watching it, and I like couldn't keep up with it. It was the whole Hannah thing. That's one of the ones that I feel like I wish they would have shortened, because it was just not working for me. So this is one of the ones that I had an issue with, and I feel like that's why this season should have been longer, even if it was like 13 episodes. The whole thing with the sisters and the lady in the lake, I feel should have been introduced a little bit earlier within the show. I'm not gonna lie, I hated that whole thing. Like, they could have gone the whole show without showing who the fuck the lady in the lake was. Although I was under the impression the whole time that it was Miss Jessel. Turns out it wasn't. But I feel like A, it could have been cut, or B, it should have been introduced earlier. But that's just what I think. Another things, too many red herrings. Too many red herrings. I don't mind a good red herring or two within a show, within a movie, you know. It keeps things spicy. But this show was giving me red herring after red herring after red herring every episode. And it was not good. It was not like, first it was Peter Quinn, and like he's a bad guy in this whole situation. Then they kind of implied that Miss Jessel is the lady in the lake because she died in the lake. Turns out it's not. Like, there was just so much going on and so many things getting pulled and like into the show that there were like too many red herrings going on, and just it wasn't working for me. So this next thing is in the questionable because I just didn't understand towards the end. So there is no Bly Manor because Jamie changed details within the story. So basically, Jamie was a unreliable narrator the whole time. For example, when Flora at the end talks to Jamie and she's like, my middle name is Flora. So Flora is not even her actual first name. So like the whole thing with Jamie changing everything just kind of confused me, because then like what was real? What was fake? Now I'm just disappointed. But that's just me, honestly. Now for the consensus and what I expect of season 3. So I really like this season. I know it wasn't as scary as The Haunting on Hill House, but I honestly think that's okay. I just wish they didn't market it as much as a horror if it wasn't gonna be as much horror as The Haunting on Hill House. Like, it was just a little underwhelming as well. It was like it felt short, because The Haunting on Hill House was short. It was only 10 episodes, but it didn't feel short compared to The Haunting of Bly Manor. And something else was the weird ass plot lines that I had. Those are the only issues that I really truly had. Because the rest of the questionable is just me nitpicking. I honestly can't wait to see what Mike Flanagan adapts next. I'm wondering how many seasons the Haunting anthology is gonna be. Because like, there's gonna be a point where it's gonna get repetitive if it's just like a bunch of ghosts haunting people in a manor or in a mansion. So I'm wondering what mansion is gonna get haunted next. Because I knew of the Turn of the Screw and I knew of the Haunting of Hill House, but I don't know what other mansions exist out there that they could base a season on. But I can honestly say that I'm excited to see what he comes up with. I can't wait to see who Victoria Pedretti, is that how you pronounce her last name? Victoria Pedretti, who played Danny on this season, plays next. I just want to see her as the main protagonist again, honestly, because she is such a good actress. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Take care of yourselves and see you in the next one. Bye bye.